How do we unleash our leadership potential and transform the world around us? Our guest today is Dr. Sam Adeyemi. He is a global speaker, a strategic leadership expert, minister, and author who has influenced millions of people on success and leadership for more than 25 years. He shifts mindsets, to help leaders see possibilities and to become those possibilities. And in 2015 and 2017, he spoke at the Global Leadership Summit, which is a global conference attended by over 400,000 leaders from 130 countries. And his Daystar Leadership Academy has graduated over 45,000 leaders since he founded it in 2002. And his recent book, I actually read, it's called Dear Leader, Your Flagship Guide to Successful Leadership, is a valuable resource for leaders. And it outlines how successful C-suite leaders think. And I say I read that book because I know he's got another book coming out. I have not read that yet, but we'll talk about that here today. Dr. Adeyemi, we're welcome to the Leaders of Transformation. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's my pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. And I read all that. Sometimes I don't do people's kind of like, I mean, I could be sitting here all day reading your bio, but I expanded on it from what I normally do, just to kind of give the understanding of the experience that you have as a leadership developer. And so I'm really excited to have the conversation with you, talking about, because this is Leaders of Transformation, talking about leaders who create transformation. Now, before we do that, I always love to do a shout out to the person or the firm that introduced us. So Wasabi Publicity gave us this opportunity through their introduction. So thank you to them. They have been amazing over the years. Drew has been on this show as a guest a number of years ago, the co-founder, and we just really appreciate them. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about leadership, starting off with how you define the role of leadership, and then we can go from there.
Okay. So I see leadership as the ability to influence one or more people to achieve worthwhile goals. Well, it should be goals normally, but I like to qualify it because leadership has tremendous impact. Its effect is outsized, both positively and negatively. Over the years, I've come to realize that people confuse the word leader with the word leadership. Well, leader refers to personalities, but leadership refers to the concept, right, of influence, the influence of one person on another, right, to produce results. So again, in my view, leadership is the ability to influence one or more people to achieve worthwhile goals. And once we shift the discussion from leader, from personalities to the concept of influence, then we realize that leadership happens at all levels. There are many people who, once they see the word leader or the word leadership, they just tune off because they believe it has to do with the guys at the top, right?
Yeah.
Especially the guys in government, right? But once you say it's one person influencing the other, then we realize that it happens at all levels. How do we account for the influence of parents on the children, right? And they say the basic foundation for the values are usually laid by the age 7. Parents have tremendous influence on their children's lives. In fact, what the teachers do in school is actually help the parents to achieve their objectives.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, right? I know. That's what it's supposed to be. So, and then teachers exert tremendous influence, employers exert tremendous influence, in the religious space, people exert influence, even friends exert influence on one another. So leadership happens at all levels.
So it reminds me of a mentor of mine many years ago. I said to him, I always wanted to be an example. And he goes, Nicole, you're always an example. The question is, what kind of example are you?
Oh, wow.
And it's like, wow, we're always being an example. Even when I'm in the grocery store and I might be rushing and I'm not paying attention to the people around me, or the way I operate, the way I treat the cashier, I'm an example. Even in that situation, I'm demonstrating my leadership and the influence in that. And so I'm so glad that you started off there by saying it is something that is relevant to all of us. Because I've actually had people say, "Oh, my that show is about leadership. It's not for me." And it's like, no, it is for all of us. And I believe that we're all capable of being leaders of transformation. We're always transforming. Its question is, what's the transformation that we're making? Are we elevating? Are
Mm,
we diminishing? Are we sidetracking? What are we doing? So, yeah, so good. Now, let's talk about this idea of heart centered leadership, because you mentioned worthwhile goals. And I know this heart centered leadership is near and dear to your heart.
yeah.
And so, talk about what that is and why that is so important, especially right now.
Thank you, Nicole. So I have these concepts that I call leadership stroke. And the thing is that sadly, when somebody has a stroke, it's likely that one side of their body does not function that well anymore. So I say in leadership, character is important. Competence is also important. Character is important. Competence is also important. And um, I draw the attention of corporate executives to the fact that they do a lot of training for their managers and their leaders, and most of it has to do with competence. But then I tell them the character side is also very, very important. Well, I was interviewed on a TV show some time ago, and they quoted, a prominent person who said, well, in leadership, you need character and you need competence. If you must do with only one, make sure it's character. And I said, I'm sorry, I beg to differ. If someone has character, but he doesn't have competence, he's like somebody who wants to drive a car and they say, oh, he's such a nice person. He's so kind. He won't even hurt a fly. Well, nobody taught him driving. He doesn't have a driver's license. Yeah, he just drives by the grace of God.
I'm not
And
driving with him.
right? I said, would you be comfortable sitting in the car? Oh, no. So being nice is not enough. You've got to have the skills, and leadership is a skill. I said, however, if somebody has the skills but has no character, you just have a sophisticated crook. The
Yes.
person will be intelligent, sophisticated, and so on, but the person will use the skills for the wrong reasons, right? So, and that's where the heart comes in. And honestly, I would say that the basic thing that drives heart leadership is capacity for empathy,
Mm,
capacity for love, the capacity for compassion. Now, people feel uncomfortable when I use the word love in the boardroom, right? In a leadership discussion. And I say, oh, no, 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 sorry. It's not about romantic love, okay? Because I read somewhere in the Bible that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. I said, I'm absolutely certain God wasn't feeling romantic. No, the kind of love we're talking about is sacrificial love. It's the recognition of a person's value
yeah.
to the extent that you recognize it, you celebrate it. Now, how do you value a human? A human is the most valuable asset on the planet, and leadership is about people. So leadership is about relating with and influencing the most valuable assets on this planet. And what I know, at least from the scriptures, is that God created man in his own image. At least we know that of all beings on this planet, man is at the top, is at the highest level. Okay, fine. So if man is the most valuable asset on planet Earth, then treat him like that, right? I made up my mind. Once I saw some of those verses in the Bible, I told myself, there's a bit of God in every human. There's a bit of God in every human. Whatever God does not deserve, then the person does not deserve it. Period. Whichever way I would not treat God, I would not treat them that way. Whichever way I would treat God, I'll treat them that way. I found out just that basic policy, that basic philosophy makes me to serve people with excellence, makes me
Mm,
to treat people with excellence. The second thing it does is it helps me to recognize gaps in people's lives. If this is the most valuable asset on the planet, then no one deserves to go to bed hungry. Not
true.
having food,
Yes.
such a basic need,
Yes.
diminishes human dignity. That's why I want to take out of my own food and give the person to eat. And and there's something about that that resonates with all of us humans, right?
Yes.
That is, it's a virtuous deed. It's a good deed, right? To meet basic needs in people's lives, to give someone water to drink, to give someone food to eat, to give somebody shelter who cannot afford it, or give somebody $5 or $10 who cannot afford to buy groceries. I think when leadership starts from that foundation, when it's built up from that foundation, you get the best results. It serves as the foundation for the most powerful values on earth. Now, if I love you, I won't deceive you, right? I won't lie to you. So that
Yeah.
love, that compassion, that empathy is the basis for integrity. It's the basis for honesty. And like we've described, it's the basis for kindness. It's the basis for generosity. It's the basis for patience. It's the foundation for forgiveness, right? I can write off an emotional debt because I know you are worth more than that, right?
Yes.
So today we do a lot of things that are plastic. Yes, we've read the books. They say this is how a leader should behave. This is what a leader should do. But if the inner motivation is not there, the capacity to sustain those things will not last. We cave in,
Yeah.
right? We break under pressure because people can really stretch you when you're a leader, right? They can
Yeah.
task you. But when you see potential in a person, then you decide to make whatever sacrifices you can to bring the best out of the person. Now,
Yeah.
that's the highest level of leadership, helping other humans to be the best they could be, to become people even they did not know they could become, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love that your explanation of that and how it's so simple and yet so profound to think that that issue of love filters out and actually influences all the other and determines how we will uh, approach all the rest of the topics of leadership, if you will, in terms of, and I love what you said there about character and competence. And I think if you have enough character and you realize you don't have the competence, you also should step down. I've had clients being a business
Mm,
coach and saying, look, I'm an asset to your business, right? We help to grow your business asset on several levels, but
yeah.
that asset, and I said, and if I'm not, I should fire myself because it goes
Mm,
against, like that's where that character also comes in there. It was interesting you're saying that, but by the time that this is released, we'll know the next president of the United States.
right,
And now one of the things that as we vote, I hope that people vote from a place of character
right,
and competence. I actually did a post about this a few months ago. It's character and competence.
right.
Some other things is, policies like, and but that all's tied into what you're talking about here. And the challenge with that, of course, is, and when we look at why leaders don't do that, I mean, I think everybody wants to love and be loved at the
Right.
core of who we are. And yet there's so much brokenness. There's
Mm,
so many leaders that don't have that capacity. So when you go into organizations and you're working with leaders, and I'm sure you've been in rooms, if you've worked with that many leaders, there's going to be a good percentage of them that don't have the capacity for that when you start off working with them. How do you create that capacity in them when perhaps it was somebody else that was not a good leader and did not
Mm,
foster that in them? Like, where is that turnaround, that transformation in them, so
yeah,
that they can actually go out and share that with others?
thank you. So interestingly, the foundation is in the invisible parts.
Yes.
It's in the mind, right? It's in the mind. Um, I love the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And just for the fact that it actually presents a step-by-step model for cultivating new habits. And he says, well, the way it works, something gets into your conscious mind. If it stays there long enough, then it goes into the subconscious part of the mind. And that's the basic thing that leaders actually have to be able to create shifts down there on the inside, that subconscious part. So the basic tools for us as leaders are first the vision, the vision of the organization. I repeat the vision of our organization over and over and over and over. Because the beautiful thing about it is it's a picture actually of the future. It's the picture of a future reality. And when we place ourselves in that picture, all of us are better people in that
Yes.
picture. That's it. All of us are better people in that picture. So I want to sell an idea to someone that I see a picture of them that is a future reality. And I'm seeing possibilities. I define vision as the ability to see people, places, and things, not just the way they are, but the way they could be. People, places, things. And you've got to use your imagination for that, right? That's why I believe vision is so critical to leadership. It's at the heart of leadership. So, so this is important that I keep in mind the vision of our organization. When I look at the people that I have, I see them in the light of that vision. They've got to be better people in that vision. Our mission statement is important. I repeat it over and over. That's what we do every day to get to the fulfillment of that vision. That's the reason why we've got to wake up in the morning and show up at work. I repeat it over and over and over and over until it sinks in, right? Then I repeat the core values of our organization over and over. These are principles and standards that we have adopted to control our decisions and our behavior. I find stories, right, that demonstrate those values because they've got to buy into those values. And to buy into those values, sometimes people have to make paradigm shifts. They have to make shifts in their thinking. They have to shift what they believe, right? What they believe about other people, what they believe about people of other races and other genders, and or the other gender, and what they believe about somebody who belongs to another social class and things like that. People have to make adjustments in the process of adopting those values. So I repeat the values. More than that, I model the values. I model the values. I make sure that our policies reward alignment with those values and react to non-alignment with those values. It has to come from everywhere, even the environment, right? It's got to speak the vision, speak the values, because it always has to start from that shifting of people's minds. I also make sure that there is a defined training program, defined, because there's got to be consistency of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
The organization. So there's got to be at least a basic training program. I pay attention to the staff handbook. I pay attention to our onboarding process, right? The onboarding process. And then finally, I should say, I actually pay attention to the recruitment to make sure that to some
Yes.
extent, yeah, that somebody has at least some basic alignment with our vision, that somebody buys into the vision and buys into the values, right?
Yes.
Before they even come in the first place.
Mhm.
And in extreme cases, if somebody is struggling, we pay attention, we maybe adjust their roles, maybe their talents are not best suited for their roles, and so on. Sometimes we go to the extent of appointing a mentor to work with the person for 6 months, help them to make adjustments. But then in extreme cases, we let someone go
Yeah.
for their own good and for our own good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I love that you started off with vision because, where there is no vision, the people perish. And when we talk about capacity, there's a lot of times and issues of the heart. We can talk about past wounds going into that. Business is not designed to be a environment for therapy, right? You go and you do that and then you come here, but what can we do as leaders, right? And even for ourselves to increase our capacity, we might go and deal with some of those things. But
Mhm.
coming here into this conversation, what you're talking about is creating the space, the habits, the vision. What I hear is planting seeds. You are planting
Yeah.
seeds. There may be some weeds in there
Mhm.
in the mind, but you are planting seeds, and you're planting seeds that are and creating the environment for that those seeds to be planted in good soil.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's not going to work out. Somebody refuses it.
Mhm.
That's a choice, but you're
Mhm.
creating that environment for them to thrive.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, we need to have those private conversations.
Yeah.
Someone, uh, you know, I made up my mind on something. If somebody is, serving with me in our organization, I never want them to doubt the fact that I love them because it gives them peace of mind.
Hmm.
It builds trust.
That's a huge seed to plant, is that seed of love, that seed of trust. Hmm.
Thank you. Right. And it makes it easier for them to be vulnerable
Yeah.
when they need help. Exactly. So sometimes actually I have to call someone into my office and have a private conversation, maybe to help them deal with something they're struggling with. And interestingly, I usually start those conversations by being vulnerable myself.
Mm. Yes.
I tell them when I was dealing with the same thing before, and it
Yes.
makes them relaxed enough to be able to open up.
Yeah. That's good. This is the type of thing that we need. And I know you're based in the US. I'm based in the US. This is global, right? But especially here in the US, this is something that is needed in organizations. And I think there's still a lot of, I've mentioned on this show that there's so many leadership consultants out there, right? But we still have so many messed up organizations. And the reason why, and I say toxic organizations, and I
Mm.
think one of the reasons why that is because a lot of what we're doing is behavior modification. And there's a
Wow.
subtle difference between the behavior modification and, like I say, it's not about going into therapy, but and having therapy sessions throughout the
Mhm.
day. It's about what you're doing is you're in between that, where it's like we're planting those seeds,
Right.
creating the environment for someone to thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
And you are calling out the best in them. You're calling it out. You're seeing it. And one of my favorite scripture in the Bible is life and death is in the power of the tongue. It's actually death and life, right? Is in the power of the tongue.
Right.
It's we can either speak life over something, we can speak
Mhm.
death over something. I remember something that Joel Osteen said once: don't use your words to describe your situation, use your words to transform your situation. If we really understood the power of
Mhm.
our words, you
Right.
mentioned about us being created in God's image. Well,
Mhm.
God spoke the world into existence. and we speak, and I know some people don't believe in God. Okay, we speak our world into existence around us. If I say I'm hungry, I'm going to be not just hungry. If I keep saying that and thinking about
Mhm.
that and reinforcing that, I'm going to be famished, right?
Right.
We all know what it's like to have somebody who says something harsh towards
Mhm.
us. Perhaps that person, we had a certain perception of them, and they totally surprised us with something that they said that was hurtful, and
Yeah.
it changed our reality. It changed our perspective. And so
Mhm.
our words have so much power. And what I'm hearing in all of what you're saying is those principles applied, practically speaking, in business,
Right.
and speaking, calling out the greatness in others. In order
Absolutely.
to see that, we get to first love them and care about them as human beings. And so I love how you built that up.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Interestingly, when some people also say, "Oh, I have a difficult boss. How do I deal with a difficult boss? My boss is just difficult, right?" I say, you know what? Your boss is a human. Why don't we start with you actually caring genuinely about your boss? I said, look beyond the facade, look beyond the job, okay? Uh, um, if you see your boss sad, why don't you just ask, "Excuse me, I hope everything is okay." I tell them you'll be surprised how the boss's attitude will change to you just to know that you care, right? But once you believe, oh, this person is a bad person, it will begin to show in your own attitude, right? And that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah.
So love is the highest law. It's the greatest law that governs human relationships. And leadership is about relationships.
Yeah. So good. I talked about your first book. You also have another book coming out. And actually, one little thing about that I wanted to highlight that I did enjoy. There was so much in your first book. I was literally copying and pasting things into for preparation for this, and we could spend hours talking about the different things, how, the ways to demotivate, the ways to motivate. Something you said stood out, which is you are building a brand, not an ego. And that's what you've been talking about here, right? It's that
Mm,
difference. There's so many leaders that are building an ego. Again, one of my mentors said, mission has to come first, right? That vision, mission first, team second, individual third. If you get those mixed up and somebody
mm.
puts themselves first, the team is probably not going to get served. The mission is most certainly not going to be. It doesn't work.
So
So we
true.
have to have those in the right order. And so I am going to encourage our listeners to get a copy of your book. We're going to make sure it's in the show notes, dear leader. And now you have another book coming out, and you're talking about these shifts. Do you want to unpack that a little bit further and share with us what because I know that book is actually on pre-order now already.
Yes, Nicole, thank you so much. So I wrote the book out of a burden. When I see the shifts going on in our world right now, it's like we're not changing fast enough to catch up with the change or with the changes. Disruptions happening everywhere, literally. So what I realized is leaders are responding with behavior modification, like you call it. The changes are not deep enough. And I'm saying we humans are creatures of habit. Organizations behave like living things. That's why they are organizations, right? They behave
Mm-hmm.
like living things. Every organization kind of has a soul. So what habits are to the individual, that's what culture is to the organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or any community of people. So, and I'm saying you're not going to create sustainable changes until you can shift culture, period.
Right.
Culture is so powerful. It's default mode. Because it's default mode, that's what habits are, right? We call them second nature.
Yes.
So culture is default mode for the majority of people in a community or group or team. So that default mode is going to overwhelm any new changes you're trying to bring in. That's why people's New Year resolutions don't work, right? Because
Yeah.
if you don't pay attention to your programming, to what's habit already, and you deliberately or intentionally change it, you'll end up doing exactly what you were doing before. So
Yeah.
that's what culture is. And I'm saying leaders are not going to be able to create sustainable changes until they can shift culture. To shift culture, you've got to be able to change mindsets, period.
Hmm.
You've got
Hmm.
to be able to shift people's belief systems.
Yes.
You've got to be able to then shift their values and then their behaviors, and its behavior consistently over time that forms the culture.
Yes.
So many years ago, once I realized, okay, the real deal, what I'm dealing with is internal, right? Because I read, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life from King Solomon in Proverbs chapter 4. I said, okay, okay. Then I saw Jesus Christ himself also spoke about it in Matthew 12:35. He said, a good man from the storehouse of his heart brings out, or the treasures of his heart brings forth good things. An evil man from the treasures of his heart brings forth evil things. In fact, when I read it in the Amplified Bible, it said, a good man from the storehouse of his heart flings out good things, and an evil man from the storehouse of his heart flings out evil things. I said, oh my God, I've been flinging my life out of my heart. If you don't like what you've been flinging out, you've got to go change something there in the heart. And I read from uh, The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. He said, the heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. I
Yes.
said, okay, how do I change my heart? That was like a big research question. How do I change my heart? And one day I was reading Matthew 13:15. Jesus Christ was explaining the parable of the sower. And he said, the hearts of these people have grown dull. I said, oh my God, if somebody's heart is dull, then their life's going to be dull. He said, their eyes they have closed and their ears are dull of hearing, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn. I was reading it then in the King James Version of the Bible. It says, and be converted. He said, so that I should heal them. It was just like boom in my mind. I said, wait. So that I should heal them? That's the physical change. That's the healing is the physical manifestation. I said, look at all the things that happened before that. Wait, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts. I said, wait. That's another dimension to this, the heart. Oh, wow. Okay. So it is what you see and what you hear eventually that enters your heart. Wow. Oh my God. Can I prove this principle elsewhere in scriptures? Then I remembered Proverbs 4, where King Solomon spoke. If you read from verse 20, it says, my son, attend to my words. Incline your ears to my sayings. Don't let them depart from before your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart. I said, that's it. Same principle again. The eyes, the ears, the heart. Then I remembered 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has entered into the heart of any man. I said, that's it again.
Wow.
There's a connection between the eyes, the ears, and the heart. I took time to reflect on it and came up with this principle. Whatever you see and hear consistently over time will enter your heart. And
Yes.
whatever enters your heart puts your life on autopilot.
So
I,
true.
I went back to that verse again.
Wow.
Said, okay, let's look at these 5 steps that I actually began to teach the model in at our leadership school, the Daystar Leadership Academy. I called it the process for transformation. Seeing with the eyes, hearing with the ears, understanding with the heart, internal conversion, and physical manifestation. However, when I was writing the book, my editor said, okay, can you help us to use words that will help us to form an acronym? Because that will make it memorable for people. I said, okay, the S is for seeing, The H is for hearing. Yeah. The I is for insight. That
Hmm.
if you meditate, if you reflect long enough on what you're seeing and hearing, you will gain understanding. You will gain insights. You will be able to connect dots. You will see cause and effect connections. Oh, wow. Okay, so this thing that is happening, this is what is causing it. That gives you power. You can now be intentional. So that moves you to the next level, which I call formulate for the F, decision making. Okay, good, good, good. From now on, this is what I'm going to do to get this result. And then the T is transform. That's where you take action. And then you repeat the actions, you form habits. And then I added an S for succeed. Okay,
Nice.
you get the results you want and you get to repeat them over and over and over. And I also talk a bit about succession there, that you can actually continue to succeed after you've left a position and even after you've left this world. So
Mm,
that's what I have in the book. I apply the shift model to the individual for transforming your own life. Then I apply it to teams and organizations. So as a leader, you can actually help your team to go through this process by influencing what they see and hear consistently over time. And then I apply it to nations, that we can actually do this with whole nations, sharing our vision, leveraging the educational system, the media, the entertainment industry, music, because what happens, what makes all those platforms powerful is the fact that it is what people see and hear consistently over time,
yeah.
shapes their hearts.
So good. Oh, I love this. I love this. And I love the fact that you talk about like personal, like the individual, the teams, and the nations, because it really is. It's like going out from an inward outward. And I think so often we think capacity wise that we focus on ourselves, but that's just the beginning point.
Right.
It's the beginning point where then it's like micro, macro, global, right? It's that process that we're called to, right? So transform the world, transform nations.
Yeah.
We are called to that. I
Mhm.
love this. This is so great, and I look forward to reading your book when it comes out. One
Thank
last thing, and maybe you can tie this in to what everything we've talked about, because it applies to the long distance leadership, because I know that at some point, you know back in Nigeria, you had, I think, a bunch of churches, and then you weren't able to be, because of the pandemic, you weren't able to be there. Um, so we're talking about proximity, but it's also something that is applied even virtually, because we have so many virtual teams and long distance teams right now. So um, how is it the same? How is it different? How do you instill that culture so that it actually is able to reach the farthest ends of the organization?
thank you. Yes, so it was an unusual scenario. So we have a church in Nigeria that my wife and I founded some 29 years ago, and we have about 40,000 members. So, and after COVID, we just found out we had to stay in the US. Now, there's a lot of intuition, at play there, because we got the messages intuitively, you know, dreams and different things like that. Um, and intuition does play a big role in the life of a leader. Everything is not linear in our world. Everything is not rational and logical. And leaders learn to listen to their inner voices, to their gut feelings, as long as we keep our consciences clear. Anyway, we found ourselves being in the US for 3 straight years. 3 straight years away from Nigeria, from the church. That was hard. However, the positive side to it is the fact that the church continued to run. Right? And now leaders ask me everywhere, what did you do? How did you do it? What are you doing? What made it possible? And I say, culture. culture, the seeds that we had sown consistently through the years. First, the leadership dimension to it, the fact that we actually had empowered thousands of people through the years. We had this shift in paradigm at some point where we said, wait. This idea that it's those of us that hold the microphone on the stage that are the ministers is not in line with the New Testament. In the New Testament, every member is a minister. So we had to train church members, and then we just shifted the load, the weight of the ministry on them, right? So we created small groups. So, and we had thousands of those small groups. We had thousands of leaders there. So we shifted from being an event-driven church to being a purpose-driven one, where it wasn't only what happened on Sunday that determined the life of our church. Oh no, in fact, it was what happened outside of the building, right? And we empowered the leaders. So when we then were not there, things just continued the way they went. And we studied systems. We studied systems both from the business sector and even from the biblical point of view. We found systems in 1 Corinthians 12, where Paul the Apostle said that the church is like the body of Christ. Now, the human body runs on systems: reproductive system, digestive system, respiratory system. A system is a group of parts that carries out a specific function. So with that, we structured our church in such a way that each area focused on achieving excellence in some important area, whether it's in fellowship, ensuring church members love one another, or it's in soul winning, or it's in ministry, identifying unique problems in the community, and then training church members to solve those problems. So you have those visiting prisons, you have those visiting hospitals, and all that, and then the worship and so on. So all those running at the same time, and then we have our management team and we have our board of trustees, and we allow the boards to run. So even when you took us out of the system, everything was working. I'll say here, when the basic principles come to play, the love, right?
Yeah.
Because with it comes the commitment, comes the loyalty, comes the trust.
Yes.
With the distance, it becomes difficult to maintain the trust. But if you have made enough deposits, you can make withdrawals. Stephen R.
Yes.
Covey said that in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I love it. He said, we all have emotional bank accounts with one another. With positive acts, we make deposits. Then when we offend or hurt, we're making withdrawals. He said, but if you've not been making deposits, you make a withdrawal, the check is going to bounce. That's when relationships break and you have big problems. So gratefully, we did not have a crisis because of how much investments we had made, how much seeds we had sown. I'll recommend that in this post-COVID era, where people do remote work now, managers don't see their subordinates sometimes for weeks, some for months. That foundation, it's more important actually for that foundation to be laid, that we genuinely care about people. So even though we're not in the same space, we can actually still show that care. And those times when we meet virtually or on the phone should not only be for running tasks. We've got to care for the person that we're not seeing regularly, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So good. This is so good. My goodness, we could talk for like hours. I know there's so much here. We're going to finish it off, and I'm just going to encourage our listeners and viewers to go get copies of your book. So the one that is out right now, Dear Leader, your flagship guide to successful leadership. And then your newest book, Shifts, is on pre-order. And so your website, so that's Sam, and then your last name, ADEYEMI.com. We'll make sure that's in the show notes too, for people that they can go there and they can access those books, follow you. You have a huge following online. I think you said like 3 million people following you, leaders following you around the world online. And so they can follow you there as well. And Dr. Adeyemi, I think, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And thank you so much for being here and for sharing your heart with us and for sharing these they're like simple yet profound. I think we were talking about this actually on our pre-chat about genius takes the complex and brings it down to the simple. Simple takes the complex and makes it, more complicated or whatever. I forget what it was we were talking. My favorite quote. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Okay, let me try it again.
Mm-hmm.
Genius takes the simple and that takes a complex and makes it simple.
Yeah.
A fool takes the simple and makes it complex. There, I got it.
it.
It's been a full day. Wonderful conversations, and I just am so blessed to be able to have these conversations, to learn from you, to learn from people that are creating such massive transformation in the world. But starting off with not just structurally and systematically, but also from a heart-centered standpoint, transforming lives one person at a time, one organization at a time, and it's one team at a time, and that's the way it goes. So thank you again, Sam, so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I've had a great time. And by the way, you're looking really beautiful today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Right? And I want to say I identify completely with your mission, you know, transformation, not just behavioral modification, but transformation. So thank you for having me on your show.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I always say that leaders of transformation take action. And so you mentioned it earlier as well, Sam. So I'm just going to tell, for our listeners, our viewers, you might need to listen to this one over again a few times just to be able to get all the concepts. Take the scripture that that has been shared here, the concepts, write them down, and then meditate on them for yourself. How have you seen them applied in your life? How can you see how they can be applied in your life? And I say your life, but also your business and your leadership role, whatever that is. And take action on something. Maybe it's stopping the next time when you're passing somebody in the office or you're on Zoom, and rather than just jumping into the tasks, is to stop and check in. I'm a task-oriented person, so I've needed to learn this and remind myself on it regularly, is to stop and check in and say, how are you? And wait to hear and literally let people know that you actually do care. And then from there, then you can go. So it's like you're presencing yourself to each other and what's going on. And then you can go into tasks and what needs to get done. Maybe that's for you is a big deal, and just starting there and continuing to develop it from there. Plant the good seeds, increase the capacity of your team, and you'll see transformation happening, culture shifts happening, and all the things that you've been looking for, the profitability and the productivity and all the things flow out of that. So I encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com, reach out to us there. Let us know how this has impacted you and what you're doing and how you're applying it. And if there's anything we can do to support you along your journey, let us know that as well. And again, thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of the Leaders of Transformation.